They say forgiveness is the best medicine for a wounded heart. But nobody tells you how sweet justice can taste when it's been brewing for 68 years. My name is Clara Thompson, and for most of my life, I believed family was everything. I thought love was a given, that loyalty came with shared blood, and that the people who carried your name would always have your back no matter what. I was wrong, so very wrong. I'm 68 now, a retired nurse living in a small town in Ohio. For decades, I poured my heart into caring for others, patients in the hospital, my aging parents, my siblings, their kids. I was the one who showed up, who fixed things, who made sure everyone was okay. But on November 15th, at my mother's memorial service, I learned a truth that broke me open. My family didn't love me the way I loved them. They used me, and when I needed them most, they left me standing alone in a cold, empty parking lot, like a forgotten coat left behind after a party. Before I dive into this story, let me ask, where are you listening from today? Drop a comment below, and if you've ever felt taken for granted by the people you love most, hit that subscribe button. I've got more stories like this coming. Stories of healing, of finding your worth, of standing up for yourself when no one else will. What happened to me that day wasn't just abandonment. It was the final crack in a foundation I'd spent my whole life trying to hold together. And it was the moment I realized I didn't have to anymore. I used to think kindness was my strength. As a nurse, I spent 35 years tending to people at their most vulnerable, holding their hands, calming their fears, making sure they felt seen. I brought that same care to my family. When my mother, Evelyn, got sick with heart disease 5 years ago, I was the one who stepped up. I drove her to doctor's appointments, cooked her favorite chicken noodle soup, sat with her through long nights when she couldn't sleep. My siblings, Margaret and Thomas, they had their own lives, busy careers, big houses, important schedules. They'd call to check in, sure, but it was always me at Mom's bedside, me making sure her pills were sorted, me holding her hand when she whispered she was scared. I didn't mind. Or at least, I told myself I didn't. That's what family does, right? You show up. You sacrifice. You put others first because that's what love means. Or so I thought. Growing up, Mom always said, "Clara, you've got a heart bigger than Lake Erie." I took it as a compliment. I wore it like a badge. But looking back, I wonder if she was trying to tell me something else, that a heart too big can break too easily. My family wasn't cruel, not in the obvious ways. Margaret, my older sister, 64, runs a bank branch in Columbus. She's sharp, polished, always in control, the kind of woman who commands a room without trying. Thomas, my younger brother, 60, is an engineer who builds bridges, literal ones, not the kind that mend relationships. And then there's Ethan, Margaret's son, 30, a software developer who's always glued to his phone, chasing the next big project. They weren't mean to me, not exactly, but they had this way of assuming I'd always be there, always ready to help, always willing to put my life on hold for theirs. And I let them. For years, I let them. I loaned Margaret money when her divorce left her strapped. I bailed Thomas out when his business hit a rough patch. I babysat Ethan and his cousins, hosted every Thanksgiving, drove Mom to every appointment. I was the reliable one, the one who never said no, the one who made everything work. And in return, they took it all for granted. They took me for granted. The day of Mom's memorial service was the day it all came crashing down. I'd spent weeks planning it, making sure every detail was perfect. I wanted it to honor Mom, to give her the goodbye she deserved. I chose her favorite hymn, Amazing Grace, and brought the silk scarf she loved to wear on Sundays to drape over her urn. I thought it would be a moment for us to come together, to grieve as a family, to share memories of the woman who'd raised us. I was naive. I didn't see it then, but my family had already checked out. They were there in body, but their hearts, those were somewhere else entirely. This story isn't just about what they did to me that day. It's about what I did after. It's about the moment I stopped being everyone's doormat and started being my own champion. It's about a mother who saw everything, who planned for me, who left me a gift I never expected. It's about a truth that changed my life. Respect isn't something you're given. It's something you demand. If you're listening, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, I want you to know you're not alone. And this story, it's for you. It's going to make you angry. It's going to make you question the people in your life who take you for granted. But most of all, it's going to show you what happens when you finally decide. Enough is enough. November 15th. That date is etched into my soul like a scar, the kind that never fades, no matter how much time passes. It was the day we laid my mother, Evelyn, to rest. The day I thought my family would come together to honor her, to hold each other up through the grief. Instead, it was the day I realized I'd been carrying them all alone. And they didn't even notice. I woke up that morning with a heaviness in my chest, like the air itself was pressing down on me. Mom had been gone for 10 days, her heart finally giving out after years of fighting. At 89, she'd lived a full life, but those last 5 years were hard. I'd been her rock, her nurse, her cook, her confidant. I didn't think twice about it. It was what you did for the woman who'd given you everything. But as I stood in front of my mirror, smoothing out the black dress I'd worn to too many funerals, I felt hollow. Grief, I'd learned as a nurse, has a way of carving you out from the inside. I'd spent weeks planning Mom's memorial service, wanting it to be perfect. I chose her favorite hymn, Amazing Grace, because she used to hum it while sewing on Sunday afternoons. I brought her silk scarf, the one she wore to church, pale blue with tiny roses to drape over her urn. I wrote the eulogy, pouring my heart into every word, trying to capture the woman who taught me to be kind, to be strong, to keep going no matter what. I thought it would be a moment for us to share her memory, to find comfort in each other. I was so wrong. When I arrived at the funeral parlor, Henderson's, the parking lot was already half full. My heart lifted a little, thinking maybe my family had come early to pay their respects, to be there for Mom the way I'd been. I walked into the viewing room, my heels clicking softly on the polished floor. The space was quiet, elegant, with vases of white lilies and soft lighting. Mom's urn sat on a small table, surrounded by photos I'd picked out, her laughing at a picnic, her holding me as a baby, her dancing with Dad before he passed. I stepped closer, my fingers brushing the scarf I'd draped so carefully. "You look beautiful, Mom," I whispered, my voice catching. "Just like you always did." The memory hit me hard. Mom teaching me to tie that scarf when I was 12, her hands gentle as she showed me how to make a perfect knot. I could almost hear her voice, soft and warm, saying, "Clara, you've got to look after yourself too." I didn't understand then what she meant. I was too busy looking after everyone else. I was pulled from my thoughts by the sound of sharp heels clicking behind me. My sister Margaret swept into the room, her black suit tailored and crisp, her silver hair styled like she'd just left a salon. At 64, she carried herself like she owned the world. "Clara," she said, her voice brisk, "you're here early." She glanced around, her eyes skimming the room like she was inspecting it. "The lilies are nice," but I told them. "No mixed flowers. White roses only. Did you check on that?" "They're perfect, Margaret," I said softly, trying to smile. Mom loved lilies. She said they reminded her of spring. Margaret's lips twitched, almost a smile, but then she was back to her phone, scrolling through emails. Sure, where's Thomas? He's always late. And Ethan's probably stuck in traffic again." Thomas, my younger brother, 60, and Ethan, Margaret's son, 30, were running true to form. Thomas was an engineer, always buried in blueprints and deadlines. Ethan, a software developer, lived in Cleveland and only came back to town for holidays or funerals. I didn't mind their tardiness. I was just glad they'd be there. "We've got time," I said. "The service starts at 2. I have the eulogy ready." "Good," Margaret said, not looking up from her phone. "Keep it short, Clara. You know how these things drag." Her words stung, but I brushed it off. She was grieving, I told myself. We all were. Thomas arrived 20 minutes later, his tie already loosened, his face flushed like he'd rushed from a meeting. His wife, Linda, trailed behind, looking uncomfortable in her black dress. "Sorry," Thomas muttered, checking his watch. Traffic was a mess. This place needs a bigger lot. I hugged him, feeling his distraction in the quick pat he gave my back. "I'm just glad you're here," I said. Ethan showed up just before the service, breathless and apologetic. "Aunt Clara, I'm so sorry. Work's been crazy, and then the babysitter canceled." His hug was quick, his cologne sharp. I smiled, though my chest tightened. "It's okay, Ethan. You're here now." The service itself was beautiful. Reverend Carter, who'd known Mom for decades, spoke about her faith, her love for her children, her quiet kindness that touched so many lives. I stood to deliver the eulogy, my hands trembling as I held my notes. I talked about Mom's chicken noodle soup, how she'd make it for us when we were sick. I shared her love of sewing, how she'd made my prom dress from scratch. I spoke about her strength, how she'd raised 3 kids alone after Dad died. My voice broke, but I kept going, feeling Mom's presence in every word. When I sat down, I looked at my family in the front row. Margaret was checking her phone. Thomas was shifting in his seat, glancing at his watch. Linda looked solemn, but distant. Ethan was texting, his thumbs moving fast. They were there, but they weren't. Not really. After the service, we followed the hearse to Shady Grove Cemetery for the burial. The November wind was sharp, cutting through my coat as we gathered around Mom's plot next to Dad's. The graveside service was short, but it felt final. As the urn was lowered into the ground, I felt something inside me shift, a mix of peace and loss. Mom was with Dad now, free from pain. But I was alone in a way I'd never felt before. People started to leave, offering hugs and kind words. Mrs. Jenkins, Mom's neighbor, squeezed my hand. "Evelyn was so proud of you, Clara. She always said you were her angel." Her words warmed me, but they also hurt. I stood by the grave, not ready to go, watching the groundskeepers wait respectfully. Nearby, that's when I turned around and saw the parking lot, empty. Margaret's sleek black SUV was gone. Thomas's pickup truck nowhere in sight. Ethan's silver sedan vanished. My family, the people I'd spent my life putting first, had left me standing alone at Mom's grave. I stood there, the wind stinging my face, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they'd gone to the church for the reception dinner. Maybe they thought I'd follow. But deep down, I knew the truth. They'd left because they could, because they always knew Clara would handle things, would find her way, would never make a fuss. The walk back to the funeral parlor felt endless, my heels sinking into the grass. My car was one of 2 left in the lot. I sat behind the wheel, staring at the building where I'd said goodbye to Mom just hours ago. And then it hit me, like a wave crashing over me. I wasn't just stranded at the cemetery. I was stranded in my own life. The people I'd built everything around had driven away without a second thought. Anger started to bubble up, slow at first, then fierce, like a fire catching dry wood. 68 years of being the responsible one. 68 years of being the sister who stayed close, who checked on Mom, who remembered birthdays. 68 years of being the aunt who babysat, the daughter who cared, the one who never asked for anything in return. And for what? So I could stand alone at my mother's grave while they went on with their lives, probably already planning their next meeting, their next dinner, their next day, without me. I started the car and drove home, my hands shaking on the wheel. That night, as I sat in Mom's favorite armchair, her silk scarf still in my hands, I made a promise to myself. No more. No more being invisible. No more being taken for granted. I didn't know what came next, but I knew one thing for sure. Clara Thompson was done carrying everyone else's weight. The days after Mom's memorial service felt like walking through fog. I went through the motions, washing dishes, folding laundry, answering condolence calls, but inside I was burning. That moment at the cemetery, standing alone while my family drove away, kept replaying in my mind. It wasn't just the abandonment. It was the realization that I'd spent 68 years giving everything to people who didn't even see me. I was angry, yes, but more than that, I was tired. Tired of being invisible, tired of being the one who always said yes. 3 days after the service, I got a call from Mr. Daniel Harper, Mom's estate attorney. His voice was kind but formal, the way lawyers sound when they're about to deliver big news. "Clara," he said, "I need you to come to my office. There's something your mother wanted you to know about her will." I didn't think much of it at first. Mom had always been practical about money, and I figured she'd left instructions for splitting her estate, her house, her savings, maybe the family land up north. I assumed it would be divided equally between me, Margaret, and Thomas, like everything else had always been. I couldn't have been more wrong. I drove to Mr. Harper's office in downtown Columbus, my hands tight on the wheel. His office was just as I remembered from years ago, when Mom had him draw up her trust. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with law books, a faint smell of leather and coffee. Mrs. Coleman, his secretary, greeted me with a warm smile. "Clara, dear, I'm so sorry about Evelyn. She was a remarkable woman." I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you, Mrs. Coleman. She really was." Mr. Harper stood as I entered, his silver hair catching the light. At 70, he had the kind of calm, authority that made you trust him instantly. "Clara," he said, shaking my hand, "please sit. Can I get you some tea?" I accepted, mostly to have something to hold. When we were settled, he opened a thick folder and pulled out a document. "Your mother's will," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "It's unusual, and I think you need to hear this directly." Unusual? My heart started to race. "What do you mean, Mr. Harper?" He leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. Evelyn was very clear about her wishes. She spent the last 2 years of her life planning this, and she was meticulous. "Clara, you are the sole beneficiary of her estate, the house, the land, her investment accounts, her savings, everything. It's all yours." I stared at him, the words not sinking in. "Everything but what about Margaret and Thomas?" Mr. Harper's expression softened. "They're mentioned in the will, but their inheritance comes with conditions. Strict conditions. Your mother wanted to make sure you were protected." "Protected? From what?" My mind was spinning. "I don't understand," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He slid the document across the desk. "Read this section," he said, pointing to a page marked with a yellow tab. The legal language was dense, but certain phrases jumped out at me. Sole beneficiary, primary inheritor, conditional bequests, documented patterns of behavior. I looked up, my hands trembling. "This says I get everything. The house, the money, all of it. But why? Mom loved us all equally. Didn't she?" Mr. Harper's voice was gentle but firm. "She loved you all, Clara. But she saw things the rest of you didn't. She saw how much you gave to this family. Your time, your money, your heart. And she saw how little you got back. Evelyn was a sharp woman, even in her final years. She kept records. Detailed records. Records? I asked, my stomach twisting. He nodded, pulling out another folder. Phone calls, emails, text messages. She even had witnesses, neighbors, her doctor, friends from church, who confirmed what she observed. For the last 2 years, she documented every interaction with Margaret and Thomas. And what she found, well, it troubled her deeply. Felt like the room was closing in. What did she find? Mr. Harper opened the folder and read from a typed transcript. This is from a call between Evelyn and Margaret, dated March last year. Margaret says, Clara's fine taking Mom to the doctor again. She doesn't have anything else going on. Evelyn responds, have you asked Clara if she's okay with it? She's been doing this for years. Margaret laughs and says, why would I ask? That's just what Clara does. The words hit me like a slap. I remembered that day. I'd cancelled a rare lunch with a friend to drive Mom to her cardiologist. Margaret hadn't even called to check in. Mr. Harper turned to another page. Here's one from Thomas, 6 months ago. He's asking Evelyn for a loan to cover a big business debt. She suggests he talk to you since you've helped him before. Thomas says, Clara doesn't have real money, Mom. She's got her pension and that's it. I need serious help. Tears stung my eyes. My pension had paid off Thomas's credit card debt 10 years ago. It had covered Margaret's lawyer fees during her divorce. It had bought Ethan's first computer when he started college. My money wasn't real to them because I wasn't real to them. I was just Clara, the one who fixed things. Why? Did she do this? I asked, my voice breaking. Mr. Harper closed the folder. Because she wanted her will to reflect the truth of her relationships, not the fantasy of what family should be. Evelyn told me she'd watched you give and give, while your siblings took and took. She wanted to balance the scales. Then came the part that made my breath catch. There's more, he said, his tone shifting. Your mother didn't just leave you her estate. She set up a foundation in your name, the Clara Thompson Caregivers Fund. It's meant to support people like you, family caregivers who sacrifice everything and get no recognition. If Margaret and Thomas fail to meet the conditions of the will, their share of the estate will go to the fund. And Evelyn made sure it would be publicized. The local paper, the community board, she wanted everyone to know why. A foundation? In my name? I could barely process it. Mom had seen me, really seen me, in a way I'd never seen myself. All those late-night talks, when she'd ask about my siblings, about how I was holding up, I thought she was just making conversation. But she was listening. She was planning. She was protecting me. The conditions for Margaret and Thomas were clear. They had to formally apologize for taking me for granted. They had to repay the loans I'd given them with interest. And they had to commit to treating me as an equal, not a servant. If they didn't, they'd get nothing. And the money would go to the fund, with their names attached to the story. It was brilliant. It was ruthless. It was Mom. Will they fight this? I asked, my voice shaky. Mr. Harper smiled faintly. They can try. But Evelyn was thorough. She had a mental competency evaluation done 3 months before she passed. Dr. Larson confirmed she was fully lucid. And these records, hundreds of pages, Clara, are airtight. Your mother built a case no court could overturn. I sat back, clutching the teacup, my mind racing. Mom had done this for me. She'd seen the years I'd spent putting everyone else first, the nights I'd cried alone, the dreams I'd buried to keep the family together. And she'd decided to give me something I'd never had. Power. Power to demand better. Power to walk away if I needed to. As I drove home that evening, the fog in my head started to clear. For the first time in years, I felt something new. Not anger, not grief, but possibility. My family had left me at the cemetery, thinking I'd just keep going, keep giving, keep being Clara. But Mom had other plans. She'd given me a way out, a way to stand up, a way to finally be seen. When I got home, the phone was ringing. Margaret's name flashed on the caller ID. I didn't answer. Not yet. I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely did, and sat in Mom's armchair, her silk scarf in my lap. I could almost feel her there, whispering, "Clara, it's your turn now." And for the first time in 68 years, I believed her. The phone kept ringing that night, Margaret's name flashing on the caller ID like a warning. I let it go to voicemail, sipping my wine in Mom's armchair, the silk scarf still in my lap. I wasn't ready to face her. Not yet. I needed time to process what Mr. Harper had told me, to wrap my head around the fact that Mom had left me everything. The house, the savings, the land, and a foundation in my name. It felt like a dream, but the kind where you're afraid to wake up because reality might hurt too much. By morning, I had 6 missed calls, 4 from Margaret, 2 from Thomas. I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. They'd heard from Mr. Harper's office, or maybe they'd just sensed something was coming. Either way, I braced myself and called Margaret back. She picked up on the first ring. "Clara," she said, her voice tight, "we need to talk. Now, I'm coming over." No hello, no how are you. Just that commanding tone she always used, like she was scheduling a board meeting, not talking to her sister. An hour later, she was at my door, her black SUV parked crookedly in my driveway. Thomas pulled up right behind her, his pickup truck rumbling. They walked in together, Margaret's heels clicking like gunfire, Thomas trailing with his hands in his pockets, avoiding my eyes. I offered coffee, mostly out of habit, but Margaret waved it off. "This isn't a social call, Clara," she said, sitting ramrod straight on my couch. "What's this nonsense about Mom's will? Harper's office called me yesterday, said I need to make an appointment to discuss conditions." "Conditions? What's going on?" I took a deep breath, my hands folded in my lap. "Mom left me her estate," I said, keeping my voice steady. "The house, the savings, everything. You and Thomas are mentioned, but there are conditions you have to meet to inherit anything." The room went silent, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Everything? That's impossible. Mom wouldn't do that. She loved us all the same." "Did she?" I asked, and the question hung there, sharp and heavy. Thomas shifted uncomfortably, his face reddening. "Clara," he said, his voice low, "what kind of conditions are we talking about?" I looked at them, my sister and brother, the people I'd spent my life trying to please. "You have to apologize," I said, "for taking me for granted. You have to repay the money I loaned you. Margaret, the $10,000 for your divorce, lawyer. Thomas, the $15,000 for your business. And you have to commit to treating me like an equal, not like I'm here to serve you." Margaret laughed, a short, bitter sound. "This is ridiculous. You're saying Mom cut us out because we borrowed a little money? Because we didn't hold your hand enough? Clara, you've always been dramatic, but this is next level." Her words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. "It's not about the money," I said. "It's about respect. Mom saw how you treated me. She kept records, phone calls, emails, texts. She heard you, Margaret, saying I had nothing better to do than take care of her. She heard you, Thomas, saying my money wasn't real. She saw everything." Thomas's face went pale. "Records?" he stammered. Margaret's jaw tightened. "That's absurd. Mom was 89, Clara. She wasn't in her right mind. You were with her all the time. Who's to say you didn't influence her?" The accusation landed like a punch. After all I'd done, 5 years of doctor's visits, sleepless nights, cooking, cleaning, she was suggesting I'd manipulated Mom for her money. "You think I tricked her?" I said, my voice shaking. You think I spent years caring for her just to steal from you. I think you had plenty of chances to whisper in her ear, Margaret snapped. You were always there, playing the martyr, making sure she saw you as the perfect daughter. I stood up, my hands trembling. Get out, I said quietly. Margaret blinked, caught off guard. What? Get out of my house, I repeated, louder this time. If you think I'm a liar, a thief, then we have nothing to talk about. Thomas held up his hands. Clara, let's calm down. We're all upset. Let's just talk this through. But Margaret was already on her feet, her purse clutched tightly. This isn't over, she said, her voice cold. I'm calling my lawyer. Mom wasn't herself, and I'll prove it. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. Thomas lingered, looking like he wanted to say something, but he just shook his head and followed her. I sank back into Mom's armchair, my heart pounding. I'd stood up to them, but it didn't feel like a victory. It felt like I'd lost something I'd been holding on to for years. The phone rang again that evening, Ethan this time. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Aunt Clara, he said, his voice hesitant. I heard about the will. Mom's freaking out. She says you're trying to cut her out. Is that true? I sighed, rubbing my temples. It's not about cutting anyone out, Ethan. It's about what your grandmother wanted. She left me the estate, but your mom and Thomas can inherit if they meet her conditions. He was quiet for a moment. What conditions? I explained. Apologies, repayment, respect. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. That's intense. I had no idea Grandma was keeping tabs like that. Neither did I said. But she saw things I didn't. She saw how I was treated. Ethan's voice softened. Aunt Clara, I'm sorry. I never realized, you were always there, taking care of Grandma, babysitting me when I was a kid, helping Mom. I thought you were okay with it. His words were kind, but they hurt. Even Ethan, sweet Ethan, had assumed I was fine being the family's safety net. I wasn't okay, I said quietly. I just didn't know how to say it. The next week was a blur of tension. Margaret made good on her threat, hiring a lawyer to challenge the will. She claimed Mom had been coerced, that I'd taken advantage of her frail health. The accusations spread like wildfire, whispers at the grocery store, sidelong glances at church. Mrs. Jenkins, Mom's neighbor, pulled me aside one day, her face tight with anger. Clara, don't you listen to that nonsense. Everyone knows you were Evelyn's angel. Margaret's just embarrassed, lashing out because she got caught. Caught? The word stuck with me. Mom's records weren't just about protecting me. They were about holding a mirror up to my siblings, forcing them to see themselves. But Margaret wasn't looking. She doubled down, pushing for a civil investigation into whether I'd mismanaged Mom's finances. 2 investigators showed up at my house, polite but serious, asking for bank statements, medical records, anything to prove Mom's state of mind. I gave them everything, my hands steady but my heart racing. I knew I'd done nothing wrong, but the idea that Margaret would go this far, it broke something in me. Mr. Harper was furious when I called him. This is a desperate move, he said. They've got nothing, Clara. Evelyn's mental competency evaluation is rock solid. Dr. Larson's report, the witnesses, the recordings, it's all in your favor. This will clear you, I promise. And it did. A week later, the investigators called to say they'd found no evidence of wrongdoing. In fact, they'd listened to Mom's recordings, where she talked about me with such love, such pride, that they'd been moved. Miss Thompson, one of them said, your mother was crystal clear about why she did this. You took care of her better than anyone could have. The investigation cleared my name, but the damage was done. Margaret's accusations had turned neighbors into gossips, friends into skeptics. I felt exposed, like my life had been laid bare for everyone to judge. But something else was happening too. Thomas called me late one night, his voice heavy. "Clara," he said, "I listened to one of Mom's recordings today. Harper sent it over. I didn't realize how I sounded, talking about you like you were just there to fix my problems. I'm sorry." I didn't know what to say. Thomas had never apologized to me before, not really. "Why now?" I asked. He sighed. "Because Mom was right. I took you for granted. We all did. I don't want to fight this, Will. I want to make it right." His words were a flicker of hope, but I was cautious. I'd been burned too many times. "Prove it," I said. "Meet Mom's conditions, then we'll talk." Ethan reached out again too, sending me an email that brought tears to my eyes. "Aunt Clara," he wrote, "I've been thinking about how we treated you, and I'm ashamed. You were always there for me, and I never thought about what it cost you. I don't know if I can fix this, but I want to try. Let me know how I can help." It was the first time anyone in my family had asked what I needed, and it felt like a small miracle. Margaret, though, was another story. She refused to back down, her lawyer sending letters demanding access to Mom's medical records, claiming undue influence. She wouldn't speak to me, wouldn't look at the evidence, wouldn't face the truth Mom had laid out. It hurt, but it also made things clear. Margaret wasn't fighting for family. She was fighting for control. As I sat in Mom's armchair that night, her scarf folded neatly beside me, I realized something. This wasn't just about the money. It was about who I was going to be from now on. Clara, the doormat, was gone. Clara, the fighter, was here to stay. And no matter what Margaret did, I wasn't going back. The weeks after that confrontation with Margaret and Thomas were like waking up from a long, heavy sleep. I'd spent so much of my life running on autopilot, caring for Mom, helping my siblings, being the one who held everything together, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be Clara, not the nurse, not the sister, not the aunt, just me. But Mom's will, her words, her fierce love for me, they'd cracked open a door I'd kept shut for years. And for the first time, at 68, I was ready to walk through it. I started small because that's how you rebuild a life, isn't it? One step at a time. One morning, I was flipping through the local community center's brochure, something I'd always tossed in the recycling bin before. There, on the back page, was an ad for a beginner's painting class. I'd loved drawing as a kid, scribbling flowers and sunsets in my school notebooks. But life had gotten in the way. Nursing school, work, family. My pencils had stayed in a box, gathering dust. Something about that ad called to me like a whisper from the girl I used to be. I signed up before I could talk myself out of it. The first class was terrifying. I walked into the community center, clutching a cheap set of watercolors, feeling like everyone could see right through me. The instructor, Miss Larson, a retired art teacher with a warm smile, greeted me like I belonged. "Clara, right?" she said, handing me a canvas. "Let's see what you've got." I fumbled with the brushes, my hands clumsy, but as I dipped them in paint, blues and yellows swirling together, something inside me loosened. For 2 hours I wasn't thinking about Margaret's accusations, or Thomas's debts, or Mom's empty house. I was just painting, lost in the colors, free in a way I hadn't been in years. When I got home, I hung my first painting, a wobbly sunset over a field, on my living room wall. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and that felt like a start. I started making other changes too. I cleared out Mom's old furniture from my guest room, the stuff I'd kept out of duty, and replaced it with a small desk and a vase of fresh daisies. I bought new curtains, bright ones, the kind Mom would have loved. For the first time, my house felt like it belonged to me, not to the family I'd been serving all my life. But the biggest change was inside me. I started saying no. When Thomas called to ask if I could watch his dog while he was on a work trip, I said, "I'm sorry, I've got plans." And I did. A painting class, a coffee date with a friend, or sometimes just a quiet evening with a book. It felt strange at first, like I was breaking some unwritten rule, but every no made me stand a little taller. Ethan was the one who surprised me most. He kept reaching out, not just with apologies, but with real effort. One afternoon, he drove down from Cleveland, showing up at my door with a shy smile and a box of donuts from my favorite bakery. "And Clara," he said, sitting at my kitchen table, "I owe you more than an email. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about how we took you for granted. I want to do better, not just for Grandma's will, but because you're family, and I don't want to lose you." His words hit me hard. Ethan was 30, with his whole life ahead of him, but he was trying to break the patterns his mom had set. We talked for hours that day about Mom, about his childhood, about the pressure he felt to keep up with Margaret's expectations. "She's not a bad person," he said, staring at his coffee, "but she's scared of losing control. That's why she's fighting you so hard." I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to. Margaret had always been the one in charge, the one who decided how things would go. But this time, Mom had taken that power away. Ethan started checking in regularly, texting me photos of his toddler daughter, Sophie, or asking how my painting was going. One day he sent me a link to an art exhibit in Cleveland. "You should come up for it," he wrote. "We could grab lunch after." I smiled at my phone, feeling a warmth I hadn't expected. Ethan wasn't just my nephew anymore. He was becoming a friend. Thomas was slower to come around, but I could see him trying. He showed up at my house one evening unannounced, his tie loosened like he'd come straight from work. "Clara," he said, standing in my doorway, "can we talk? No lawyers, no will, just us." I let him in, wary but curious. He sat on my couch, looking older than his 60 years, his hands clasped tightly. "I listened to all of Mom's recordings," he said. "Everyone. I didn't want to believe it at first, how I sounded, how I treated you. But I was wrong. I leaned on you too much, and I never thought about what it cost you. I'm sorry." I studied his face, searching for sincerity. I wanted to believe him, but 68 years of being let down had taught me caution. "Thank you, Thomas," I said, "but an apology's just words. Mom's conditions, repaying the loan, treating me like an equal, those are what matter." He nodded, his eyes dropping to the floor. "I'm working on it," he said. "I've got a payment plan drafted for the $15,000, and I'm here, Clara. I want to fix this." It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I told him I'd think it over, and when he left, I felt lighter, like a knot in my chest had loosened. Margaret, though, was a different story. She hadn't spoken to me since our fight, but her lawyer kept sending letters, demanding access to Mom's records, pushing the narrative that I'd coerced her. The gossip in town hadn't died down. People whispering at the diner, speculating about Clara and all that money. It stung, but I was learning to let it go. One Sunday after church, I organized a small gathering at the community center, inviting Mom's friends and neighbors. I shared stories about her love for sewing, her faith, her quiet strength. Mrs. Jenkins stood up, her voice firm. "Clara Thompson took care of Evelyn like she was her own child," she said. "Don't let anyone tell you different." The room applauded, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone. That night, I did something I'd been dreaming of for years but never dared. I opened my laptop and booked a trip to Italy, a 10-day tour of Florence and Rome with stops at art museums and vineyards. I'd always wanted to see the Sistine Chapel, to stand under Michelangelo's frescoes and feel the weight of history. The idea of going alone at 68 was daunting, but it was also exhilarating. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I wasn't waiting for my family to come along. I was going for me. As I packed away Mom's scarf, folding it carefully into a drawer, I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same Clara who'd stood alone at the cemetery. She was stronger, braver, ready to live a life she'd put on hold for too long. Margaret could fight all she wanted. Thomas could try to make amends. Ethan could build a new bridge between us. But none of that changed the truth I was finally embracing. I was enough, just as I was. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. The Clara who'd spent her life saying yes to everyone else was gone. And the Clara who said yes to herself? She was just getting started. Thanksgiving was always a big deal in our family. Mom used to spend days preparing, roasting turkey, baking, her famous pecan pie, setting the table with her good china. I'd taken over that tradition after she got sick, hosting every year, cooking for a crowd, making sure everyone felt welcome. But this year, as November rolled around, I wasn't sure I had it in me. The fight with Margaret, the whispers in town, the weight of Mom's will, it all felt too heavy. I was ready to skip the holiday, maybe spend it alone with a book and a cup of tea. But life, as I was learning, had a way of surprising you. 2 days before Thanksgiving, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Margaret standing on my porch, her coat buttoned tight against the November chill. Her face was pale, her usual sharpness softened, almost fragile. In her hands was a manila envelope, her fingers clutching it like a lifeline. "Clara," she said, her voice quieter than I'd ever heard it. "Can I come in? Please." I hesitated. The last time we'd spoken, she'd called me a liar, a thief, but something in her eyes, something raw, unguarded, made me step aside. "All right," I said, leading her to the living room. She sat on the edge of the couch, the envelope in her lap, her hands trembling slightly. I sat across from her, waiting. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of unspoken truths. Finally she spoke. "I've been wrong," she said, her voice cracking. "About you, about Mom, about everything. I didn't want to see it, Clara. I didn't want to admit I'd failed her. Failed you." She slid the envelope towards me. "This is for you. Please, read it." I opened it, my fingers cautious, and pulled out a letter, handwritten on crisp, white paper. It was long, 3 pages, single-spaced, and as I skimmed it, my breath caught. Margaret had listed 38 moments, specific times she'd taken me for granted, borrowing money for her divorce and never paying it back, asking me to cancel plans to drive Mom to appointments, dismissing my nursing career as just a job when she bragged about her banking promotions. Each entry was detailed, painfully honest, like she'd spent weeks dissecting her own heart. "I wrote it after I saw the article," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The one about Mom's foundation, the Clara Thompson Caregivers Fund. It was in the Columbus Dispatch last week, with a quote from Mr. Harper about why Mom set it up. He said she wanted to honor you, to make sure people like you, caregivers who give everything, aren't forgotten. I read it, and I broke, Clara, because I realized I was one of the people who forgot you." I remembered the article. Mr. Harper had warned me it was coming, a press release to announce the foundation's launch. I hadn't read it myself, too afraid of seeing my name in print, but I knew it mentioned the conditions of Mom's will, including what would happen. If Margaret and Thomas didn't comply, the public exposure had been Mom's final checkmate, a way to hold them accountable. "I've been seeing a therapist," Margaret continued, her eyes fixed on her hands. "I started after the investigation fell apart. I was so angry at you, at Mom, at myself. But when I listened to her recordings, really listened, I heard how I sounded. I heard myself treating you like you didn't matter. And I'm so sorry, Clara. I don't know if you can forgive me, but I need you to know I'm trying to change." Her words hung in the air, and I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to push her away, to make her hurt the way she'd hurt me. But another part, the part that still remembered us as kids, giggling over Mom's sewing machine, wanted to believe her. "Why now, Margaret?" I asked. "After all this, why now?" She looked up, tears in her eyes. "Because I don't want to lose you. Not just the money, not just the family, you, Clara. You're my sister, and I've been a terrible one. I want to make it right." She reached into her purse and pulled out a check, sliding it across the coffee table. "This is the 10,000 I owe you plus interest. It's a start. And I'm here, ready to do whatever else you need." I stared at the check, my throat tight. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about her finally seeing me. I set the check aside and looked at her. "I need more than money, Margaret," I said. "I need you to respect me, to treat me like an equal, not a servant, and I need you to prove it, not just today, but every day." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I know. I'm in therapy to work on myself, and I want to help with the foundation if you'll let me. I want to be part of something that honors you, that honors Mom." Her voice broke, and for the first time I saw my sister, not the polished bank manager, but the woman who was scared, who was trying, who was human. That Thanksgiving I decided to host after all. But this time, it was different. Ethan drove down from Cleveland with his wife, Emily, and little Sophie, who toddled around my kitchen, giggling as I gave her a cookie. Thomas and his wife, Linda, brought a side dish, green bean casserole, Mom's recipe, and Thomas handed me a signed agreement for his repayment plan, his eyes meeting mine with quiet determination. Margaret showed up with a pecan pie, her attempt at baking, and though it was a little burnt, it made us laugh. For the first time, everyone pitched in, setting the table, washing dishes, sharing stories about Mom without rushing off to their next appointment. As we sat around the table, passing plates of turkey and stuffing, I felt something I hadn't in years, peace. Not because everything was perfect. Margaret and I still had work to do, and Thomas's promises needed time to prove true, but because I wasn't carrying it all alone anymore. I was part of a family, not its servant. A week later, Mr. Harper called with news that took my breath away. The Clara Thompson Caregivers Fund wasn't just a placeholder in Mom's will. It was active, fully funded, and had already received its first grant application. But here was the twist I hadn't seen coming. Mom had designated part of her estate to create a scholarship program within the fund, specifically for nurses who care for families at home. "She wanted to honor your career, Clara," Mr. Harper said, "and she wanted you to be the one to present the first award." I was invited to speak at the foundation's launch event, held at the community center where I'd taken my painting class. I stood on the stage, my hands shaking, looking out at a room full of people, neighbors, nurses, caregivers like me. Ethan was there, clapping loudly. Thomas and Linda sat in the second row, their faces proud. Even Margaret came, sitting quietly. In the back, her presence a silent promise to keep trying. As I spoke about Mom, about her love, her vision, I felt her with me. "This fund," I said, my voice steady, "is for the people who give everything and ask for nothing. It's for the ones who care, who stay, who love even when it's hard, and I'm so honored to be part of it." The applause was warm, wrapping around me like a hug. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. That night, as I sat in Mom's armchair, I thought about how far I'd come. From that cold cemetery parking lot to this moment, surrounded by people who valued me. Margaret's letter, Thomas's promises, Ethan's friendship, they were steps toward something new. And the foundation, with its scholarships, was Mom's final gift, a way to make sure my story, my work, my heart would live on. As I sit here now, in Mom's old armchair, a sketchbook open on my lap, I can hardly believe how much has changed. A year ago, I was standing alone in that cemetery parking lot, my heart shattered by the family I thought would always be there. Today, I'm planning my trip to Italy. Florence, Rome, the Sistine Chapel waiting for me. I'm painting sunsets that aren't perfect, but feel like home. And I'm surrounded by people who see me, not as the sister who fixes everything, but as Clara, the woman I finally let myself become. Mom's gift wasn't just her estate or the foundation bearing my name. It was the courage to demand more, for myself, from my family, from life. She saw me when I couldn't see myself, and through her will, her recordings, her love, she gave me the tools to rewrite my story. Margaret's still learning, but she's trying, showing up with small gestures, a call to check in, a promise to volunteer with the foundation. Thomas is keeping his word, paying back what he owes, sitting down with me to talk, really talk, for the first time in years. And Ethan? He's more than my nephew now. He's my friend, sending me photos of Sophie's crayon drawings, cheering me on as I chase my dreams. The Clara Thompson Caregivers Fund is growing, its scholarships helping nurses like me, women and men who give their hearts to families and ask for nothing in return. Standing on that stage, speaking about Mom's vision, I felt her pride, her love, wrapping around me like her silk scarf. I felt my own pride, too, for the life I'd lived, for the woman I was becoming. If you're listening, if you've ever felt invisible, taken for granted by the people you love most, I want you to hear this. You are enough. You don't have to earn respect by giving until you're empty. You don't have to wait for someone else to see your worth. At 68, I learned that the hardest boundaries to set are the ones with family, but they're also the ones that set you free. Say no when you need to. Chase the dream you've buried. Paint that sunset. Book that trip. Stand up and demand to be seen. Because your life, your heart, your story, they matter. And no one gets to tell you otherwise. So, where are you right now? Drop a comment. Share your story. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself? To rewrite your place in your family? Hit that subscribe button if this story touched you, because there's more to come. Stories of healing, of courage, of finding your way home to yourself. Mom taught me that love is fierce, that it fights for what's right, and I'm carrying that lesson forward, one step, one painting, one day at a time.